Hello, everyone. Welcome to Obo Vinyl Global, where you are going to meet incredible storytellers, internationally acclaimed spinner of yarns. You will encounter their origin sparks, cultural crossings, and the toolbox that makes their voice, prepares them for the rhythm, and offers them pause, and the art of leaving just enough unsaid. Their breath creates magic, and silence creates suspense. They keep us leaning forward. How they retell old myths without embalming them, and the one story they are still afraid to tell. It's a very informal, curious, and joyfully unscripted, freewheeling conversation. Stories are very dangerous. They are reckless. They're unpredictable. They challenge you. They put you in situations that you can never imagine. So let us begin. Take a breath, turn your attention, and let's roll the vinyl. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Today I'm in conversation with Laura Sims, internationally acclaimed storyteller, writer, and educator. Known for championing engaged storytelling as compassionate action and for performances that braid myth and luminous personal narrative. Laura's work moves between theater, pedagogy, and humanitarian practice. It's a great opportunity to meet such a wonderful person, an artist on Obo. As you all know, Obo is a platform where we have the confluence of storytellers, story makers, story listeners, and various other audio platforms. So, Laura, welcome. Welcome to Obo.
Thank you.
So to begin with, Laura, how would you like to introduce yourself? Like if I tell you that, what is Laura for Laura? So you do.
Well, Laura for Laura is an ordinary human being. I
Okay.
would, and I love the word luminous because I think that is our natural state. And it's what I attempt to access and share in my performances and teaching and everyday life. So I don't know. But thank you.
Okay. Laura, to start with, what is that thing that first convinced you that this art of storytelling could be compassionate action rather
Oh,
than only performance? Like, what's that?
what a great question. I think from the very start, I dropped out of graduate school and was in experimental theater in Manhattan, downtown, Greenwich Village. And we were searching for forms of theater that broke convention,
Uh-huh.
that had no narrative form. And however, once accidentally, I told a story, actually Russian fairy tale that I had been told as a child. And what happened between myself and the audience was actually all that we were searching for in these, 8 a.m. to midnight experimental theater explorations. And I was sort of stunned by what happened between myself and the audience. So I never went back to graduate school. And I decided there must be, a kind of template or a theatrical event that is based on these kind of structured narratives that do break convention by the very nature of their performance. So that led me on a detour that I'm still on. And this kind of fascination with an art form that wasn't recognized for what it is, although at present it's kind of a mainstream word, but still looking at what actually happens. This kind of ritual event that is more a vehicle for a certain kind of transmission. And I know a little bit about you, so I know this is something that also informs your explorations in theater. This and also you're from India, where this sense of sort of everyday devotional theater is very alive still. So that's really how it happened. And then I really wanted to know what this engagement could produce. And so it began with actually my working in kind of difficult schools and situations, high schools in New York and, prison high schools in Mississippi, in which I was attempting to use the stories to see what I could provoke and what could happen between myself and kids who were, being imprisoned for crimes or had difficult lives. And that took me to work in northern Romania with Roma women and in Haiti and so forth. So it was, and actually, as a result of that, I felt that as the narrator, I needed really, I was reading amazing journals in the museum, the secret library of the Museum of Natural History, these kind of journals by great ethnologists who were working with shamans and, ritualists and elders in tribal cultures. And I thought, there's no way for me to be initiated. That would be how I would break through to this place that I sensed was right there. And so I began to study Tibetan Buddhism,
Oh,
meditation,
right.
because I felt it was the most akin and actually living thing that I could do to have access to some of this quality of mind that I felt. So those are the streams.
That flowed and that kind of created the kind of form that you would love to work with. Yes, and so many, as you had, well, it's a very metaphorical but interesting idea of streams entering your system and then evolving into one single performance of yours. And as you mentioned, that your earlier experience with theater, and it had been the same with me. Like, I have also shifted from theater to storytelling, and definitely this non-linear theater which doesn't have a very structured storytelling or a story, but very fragmented and with lot of momentary improvs which would make the living performance very lively and living for the performer as well as for the audience. Very unexpected moments in performance. And from there, as you had rightly mentioned, the response that you would have from the audience is magical, like that is extraordinary, and sometimes so very unexpected and unpredictable that you get carried away with it. It's like a wave that pushes you in. So that has also been a triggering point for me also to shift into something that is more compassionate not merely performance, which we are just not performance of well choreographed or well designed performance, but living moments which you bring in together. So on this aspect, can you just kind of, share some moments of your storytelling performance wherein these kind of responses you had received from the audience or the transformation that happened in you as a storyteller at that moment of story performance? If you can just share a little about that.
Kind of approach this. I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. Even I love your question, but at 4 a.m. this morning, I woke from a very strange dream.
Ah,
And there are dreams that you just have, and then there are kind of sort of psychological dreams. And then sometimes there are images that are so penetrating that I think there's something that I'm being informed about, or something has to be transmuted. And I got up because I felt I had to pay attention. And often I don't really, it's very hard to understand something that's sort of beyond understanding. But in this dream, one of the images was arriving somewhere, and I was told that a girl was missing
oh,
and that people were very afraid for her. And so everything that we had to do was sort of postponed. And then someone on the side, and I didn't recognize him, but I knew them in the dream, sort of whispered to me that she was all right,
ah,
that she was hiding because she had escaped a traumatic situation. And that was one of many of the images, but it really, I don't know why, I just wrote it down. And then I was thinking about our conversation.
oh,
And
good.
one of the things that you had said the last time was maybe you could tell a story. And
Mhm.
I thought, oh, I better, think about what story I'm going to tell, although that's not always the case. And the story that came to me, well, the first line of a story came to me. And the story actually begins once upon a time, there was a tailor's apprentice. But I have very rarely told this story. And I wanted to tell it this way. I wanted to tell my dream
Right.
because I had arrived somewhere in this dream
Correct.
where I was going to be 1 or 2 nights and I had no luggage. I had simply forgotten to pack. But I lied when I got there. And I laughed and said, "Oh, I can't believe I packed everything and I left it in my house." So I want to begin this story by saying what the storyteller knows. The storyteller is often in the contemporary world a sort of servant of how the chronology of the story has been set down by folklorists and people who are trying to make it more literal and see this story as text.
Correct.
Well, but this is not the fiber of the event. So I wanted to start it by saying to my audience, a girl was missing for so long that people forgot. And even the kingdom that she ruled with her brother was lost, perhaps buried somewhere deep in a forest. But once there was a young man who was studying to be a tailor. And in those days, when you finish your apprenticeship, then you go somewhere to a village, you set up a shop. But something inside him compelled him. And he went out in search of something, but he didn't know what it was. and he came to a forest. And when night fell, he was terrified. How wild beasts! So he climbed into a tree. And then it grew still. And he looked out and saw a small house with a light. And he thought, well, of course, I'll go and ask if I could have something to eat, if I can spend the night. Maybe I'll be safe there. He knocked on the door. And a man appeared who was wearing what I could only describe as a sort of robe made of fragments of fabric sewn together. It's just sort of a mishmash quilted coat. What do you want? I wonder if I could just sleep safely in your house. And the old man gave him a place in the corner where he could sleep. Weary, he fell asleep. But he woke up to a terrible sound. The sound of hooves stamping on the ground, howling. And he looked out the window and he saw a bull, horned bull, raging. And then he saw a stag rushing through the trees, bent down and raced at this huge bull, caught the bull on its horns and threw the bull over its back. For some reason, unbeknownst to me or anyone, because it's not explained, and the best parts of stories are never explained. The young tailor's apprentice raced out and followed irresistibly for a long time through the forest after the stag, who led him up the side of a mountain where there was a flat area, and the stag beat his hooves against an iron rock that shut a cave. And then the stag disappeared, and the door opened. Flame, smoke. And at first, the child's apprentice was absolutely horrified. But a voice said, "Don't be afraid. If you come inside, everything you seek, you will find." And he entered the cave on the high mountain in the dark forest. And that's the real beginning of that story. So I wonder now, I ask you a question, because really, what happened to you? What happened to you while you listened? Not what you think the story is about. What happened? What happened?
No, 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 no. This is what was happening to me. First of all, when you mentioned about a dream that is very personal.
Mm,
As Jung has said, that dreams are personal myths, and
mm,
myths are collective dreams. So I was just thinking that when this very personal and intimate experience comes to the public domain, and
mm,
I, being an outsider, how do I look at it? So, is it a lie or is it a truth? Or what is it? Because stories move in both direction, the lie and the truth. So, when I am actually And as you have already mentioned that it is a part of your dream that you have dreamt today in the morning, I was entering into a different realm, a different world altogether into somebody's mind and trying to find out that how is this dream developing? Because dreams are so very, what you call, not moving in a straight line. They move
So
in a zigzag way.
I want to ask you though, physically,
Oh,
what happened to you?
uh,
Because I was watching you. What happened to you?
I was really getting immersed in it, a
Hmm.
very immersive
What does
experience.
that mean? What
And,
happened?
and when I was looking at the tension that you were creating, and I could
Hmm.
experience that tension in me also. It was like, if you consider it to be theoretically, the the I was going through a rasa experience, and rasa experience, the experience of a rasa, and this rasa is it is the wonder. I was having the experience of having an experience uh, uh, of something that I cannot imagine, of something where I am pretty naive, I'm unexperienced, and I'm being led by you, like I'm being pulled by you into that world. And everything that I hear and I see, the movement of your hands, the breath, it was actually kind of giving me that experience of wonder. I was being surprised at every corner. And to be very, I was not following the narrative, but I was following the change in emotions, to be very honestly. How you are shifting from, surprises to fear to expectation and then victory. All these kind of emotions were kind of touching me, like, they were being splashed on my face and my body. And as you said, that what experience I was having, I would always say that it is the experience of feeling ascharya, surprise was the feeling that I was having. And physically, I was becoming more immobile. My mobility was being reduced. I was trying not to move. I was resisting. So, suppose I wanted to move, but I was trying to resist. So, this is what I could instantly kind of give my responses to you, Laura.
Very interesting because, of course, I understand that because you're a director. So you're paying attention to the sort of invisible
Right.
arc of what's occurring, the sort of invisible thread.
Correct.
When I'm teaching storytelling, to make my students aware of what they're really doing, you have to have a sense of that invisible thread, like almost an emotional or psychic map. On the other hand, if we were in, a theater, because this is your brilliance, the audience probably would have been caught up in the suspense of what's going to happen next. Because also, um, this weird combination of a tailor's apprentice, a missing girl, an old man in a weird coat, the bull and the stag. These are, the mountain, these are all such powerful images, like a waking. We're having a waking dream.
Right. Right.
My least favorite thing to do is actually have people sort of analyze the meaning of a story.
That's
It's like
what
who,
shouldn't.
because that it's not so up, but that's interesting. But you captured sort of this the invisible aspect of it. I worked with a director in California in a theater, and on opening night, I realized that what my actual power was the least. part of the performance that was created because it was a proscenio stage and the lights were on me. And so the next day I asked the lighting guy and the sound guy to come back. And I said, okay, we wanted to see this relationship between my sort of epic storytelling, interspersed with narrative and personal narrative. Let's remove all the light cues and let's think of the entire theater and change those light cues. And they'd be very subtle. And when I'm the narrator, you can have me right there. But when it's happening, let the lights change everywhere. But let's not direct the audience too much because then I just decided, okay, I have to do my comments on the side, my little jokes and a memory or a different sound. And so we went into this process where they also became my allies, my listening allies. If I
Correct.
changed, they had to know the piece rather than the words. First of all, I never memorized anything in my life. So they had to be there, be sensitive. When does that music go?
Correct.
And they were so brilliant at it. It was really thrilling. And the difference between the very formality of the audience on day one and then as it progressed and we had this, I don't know, a psychic dance together which included each audience, which was always different. I could hear people sighing, crying. At the end, people standing up. And like, sometimes they weren't applause. They didn't know what to do. And so I said, well, do whatever you like.
No, that
Stand and wait to talk to me because everybody had their own stories and experiences. So soon I just would let the lights go up completely and we would just sit around and talk.
correct.
And that was where I really felt I began to understand something about lyric theater
Correct.
and the lyric poets
Mhm.
of, pre-Hellenic Greece, like
Correct.
Sappho, these forgotten people whose sound and images and connecting the divine and the ordinary was their skill.
Correct.
And it's also, if you go to the temple and you don't make an offering, then it's just a kind of entertainment.
Correct.
But when you make an offering from your heart, something shifts. So that's, thank you. That's so interesting that you
No,
did that.
that is that is as we have already mentioned, because I have got a split mind, you know. One is trying to find out the artist in you, like your craft, like how
Mm.
you are creating that magic. And at the same time, I'm allured to kind of immerse in that magic. But that is something that's bad about a director, you know. Often they would try to look at the craft that is creating that magic because the magic is already accepted. Yes, she is already creating that magic. She is in that state of
I'm not creating it.
trance,
I'm like covering it.
covering it. Okay.
But
Uncover.
I think because of who you are and your brilliance and sensitivity, that there would be a moment in this story where suddenly you were in the story
Correct.
and part of your mind would forget
Correct.
and you suddenly want to follow because you figured the other thing out.
Absolutely.
And it comes from, I have no idea.
Right.
I could never explain that. But all of my practices my whole life have been so that I can speak from there and be with my audience. So for me, those are the real skills of the storyteller. And also knowing the story. What's really happening in this story? The girl who is, he sits on a stone. He's instructed and he descends down and finds a sort of really archaic cave with signs on the walls and two glass coffins. And in one is a kind of palace in a village just submerged in trees, like a little diorama. But in the other is a woman. And he realizes that even though she's in a coffin, glass coffin, her hair has been growing.
Mm.
And never, in the fairy tale, it never begins with her because it begins, with the tailor, a so-called hero.
Correct.
And I think here's this woman
Mhm.
still alive, her hair still growing. And what is a tailor's apprentice? Who is this extraordinary young man who's you learn to sew things together that have been apart or to repair? You learn how to see so carefully when you're a tailor. So I think I spent a lot of time looking up what does a tailor really do? So into the African market on 116th Street. And that I had the tailor was going to fix something. And I thought, now he'll measure. He never measured. He looked at me.
Ah,
And I was a little afraid to give this uh, coat to the tailor because he's like, what is he going to do? He didn't measure, he didn't write anything down. And then I left and I thought, okay, I came back and never have I had anyone um, repair something. It was quite difficult because it was the shoulders, but it was this astonishing thing where his eyes had knowledge.
right.
There, and so I said, well, okay, how much? Thinking, the tailor on Broadway here would charge me like $50. And he said, $5. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, is that too much? I said, little. And we had a fight, and a hilarious fight.
So, this reminds me of like when you are telling a story, uh, or you've thought of like this particular you had the dream and you decided that okay, I'm going to share it today, and you had the first line framed and you begin. Then do you have moments when you are not there? The story is like carrying you from one place to the other. Who is like in control, the story or you?
I am definitely one of the unique things.